This week on LTC News, a refuge for young artists.
Kids who love art to come here and create work that is their strongest.
UMass Soccer steps up.
Be the best that we can possibly be, and at the end of the day, it's just a matter of doing what we love.
And a great neighborhood right downtown.
The city of Lowell this year was fortunate enough to receive such a designation as one of America's great neighborhoods.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. Congratulations are in order for the city of Lowell. The Canalway Cultural District won a 2018 American Planning Association Award as a great neighborhood. The district is just a portion of Lowell's downtown and includes many of the city's cultural and historical resources. It was one of only 5 cities in the country to win this designation. Lowell Director of Economic Development, Andrew Shapiro, tells us about this prestigious award.
So the American Planning Association, it's based in Chicago and Washington, D.C., is sort of the preeminent advocacy organization for city planners, both public and private. And they also advocate for the creation of great public spaces, urban planning, and they have a designation each year that they give out to 15 different communities for what they call America's Great Places. And the city of Lowell this year was fortunate enough to receive such a designation as one of America's great neighborhoods, and it was for the downtown Canalway Cultural District. A big reason Lowell got the award was because of the progress we've made over the course of basically 3 decades, almost 4 decades now, when there were several abandoned properties, and then the federal government brought forth the National Lowell Historical Park and worked very closely with federal and state partners to put forth programs to revitalize the downtown. Fast forward several years later, I think many people are seeing some of the fruits of that labor, a lot of the progress showing through in the vibrancy of our downtown, the number of events that we hold that are free to the public, the many cultural amenities that we have downtown, and the beautiful reuse of our historic structures. So I think that the organization saw all of those things sort of coming together and the great place that the downtown has become, and that's probably why we were recognized. Not one entity or person can do all that's needed to revitalize a city. I think the city planning department plays a large role. I think the leadership of the city council and the city manager's office and being able to provide policy leadership and the funding necessary that the city needs is obviously, they are strong partners as well. We've always had strong state delegations and federal delegations to help us with funding. And we have local organizations like the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation, the Lowell Plan, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, that provides supporting roles as well in a lot of the activity and a lot of the support that goes into making the downtown and the Canalway Cultural District a great place. And I should also mention, because this is a designated cultural district in the state of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Cultural Council has played a big role as well as of recently. It puts us on more of a national map at this point, in circles where you have a lot of other planners and other people that are dedicated to the work that we're doing, see sort of the examples that we're putting forth. So hopefully we're showing something that other folks can replicate in their own communities.
The American Planning Association will come to Lowell later this month to present the award. Lowell Celebrates Kerouac is an annual festival of Lowell's most famous author who grew up here and wrote about life in his hometown. This year, the festival takes place from October 4th through the 8th and includes art installations, a pub tour, poetry, and jazz. Kerouac's work remains relevant today and continues to attract new readers. This year, a long-lost manuscript called The Haunted Life is being adapted for the stage right here in Lowell. Merrimack Repertory Theater's artistic director Sean Daniels explains before a working session with actors at UMass Lowell's theater in Mahoney Hall.
Hey friends, thanks for gathering again together. So we have a new...
It's a partnership between MRT and UML, and so what we're doing is we're working on the script this week.
And then cut everything
right now the show is way too long and has too much poetry in it and has many parts where it's beautiful to read, but we all get a little tired listening to it on the table. So our job is to cut it down this week to be able to do it.
You may have a better sense of what lines should go. Okay. Just flag them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of professional actors that we've brought in and the best UML students that will come in and work with us to do it, and they'll work side by side on doing it. Todd Titchen, who is the professor who put together the book, it works at UML, and so he was with us last night in terms of talking through many of the things that we might not have understood about what it is. And so the goal is for the scripts to leave here in better shape than it arrived.
Haunted Life was lost for many years. As a matter of fact, in Jack's lifetime, he had thought that it was gone. It was found many years later in the closet of Allen Ginsberg at Columbia University. And a student, a friend, took the manuscript and kept it all those years, I believe. John Sempers found that this thing was going up for auction, the manuscript. And so he got in touch with the auction house and the person who was selling it, and they worked out a deal where they could get a copy of it.
It's a joy to work on any Jack Kerouac because of the poetry and how great it is, but there could not be a more current piece to be working on right now. And also, like with any classic piece, there's a little bit of distance, right? We're talking about 1941, so I think it allows us to talk about the issues of today without feeling like we're kind of knee-jerky partisan right off the top.
And then I would love just to read the whole thing again.
So the plot of the show is that Jack's father feels that immigrants are ruining the country and that Democrats just want as many immigrants in as possible because then they'll be able to vote for them, and that America used to be great, but it's not great anymore. The only difference is that this is right before World War II, and the president he's talking about is President Roosevelt. So it's also fascinating to see what we think of as being modern problems are actually maybe just America's problems that they haven't ever really gotten over.
I think the thing that maybe fascinates me, and perhaps a lot of people, is the honesty of the prose. He is a very daring writer who really spoke from the heart and didn't seem to be that inhibited. He told it the way he saw it. And many musicians gravitate toward his work. His prose, he said, was inspired by jazz. His prose method, called spontaneous prose, was inspired by the jazz musicians sort of riffing, if you will, and creating a spontaneous form of music.
Middle of the page, can you just change Peter's age to your age?
We started working on this a year and a half ago, putting it together, and we're about 6 or 7 months away from it premiering.
It's just so incredibly seamless and beautifully done, and I couldn't be more enthusiastic about this production.
Some Lowell Celebrates Kerouac exhibits continue throughout the month of October. Check out their website for details. Many people think of Western Avenue Studios as a place where established artists can create, sell, and display their work. But it's also home to a small community of developing artists. Here at Refuge Lowell, students of art can get intensive instruction and mentorship and help develop their portfolios for the college admission process.
The mission of Refuge Lowell is to provide a safe space for students to come, kids who love art, to come here and create work that is their strongest, to develop their self-confidence, to develop their skills, and really find themselves.
Now, you said the word or phrase, safe space. Why is that important to an art student?
It's just really great to go from being a regular public school teacher in a setting where I barely have any time with my kids, and then having a community that supports what I'm doing here and understands the value of what I'm doing and understands that these kids need this. They need to be able to be creative. They need to think outside of the box. They need to become problem solvers because we got a lot of problems, and they need to learn how to figure them out as they get older with confidence so that the system isn't eating them up. It's really why I actually offer scholarships to local youth to come here, because I get to work with those very kids in my classroom and see them flourish in a space like this and really grow into the individual that they're truly meant to be. The object in laying out
What are the age range of some of the students that you have here?
The typical age range is from 10 to 22. So we'll have kids who come here that want to develop a portfolio because they're looking to transfer from one college to another, or we'll have kids who are looking to develop a portfolio to go into college.
Speaking of college portfolios, you had somebody from the Rhode Island School of Design here today. What was that woman doing?
She's providing portfolio reviews for kids who are really interested in going into interested in going to RISD or interested in just getting feedback on their portfolio to apply to other schools. We also reach out to all the local schools in the area. So we actually had several kids come tonight that don't even attend classes at Refuge. It's just a free thing for them to get the feedback that they need to develop a strong portfolio that maybe might help them with their acceptance, but maybe even more with scholarship funding.
How are the students that you met with from Refuge?
They had really some interesting, strong work, a lot of different interesting ideas, some strong technical skills. I'll kind of give them some tips about, what we look for in their portfolio, what pieces they should include, maybe what to avoid, and kind of give them some advice on how to develop their work.
Andy, you used to be a student of Nikki's, and now you've come full circle, and you're here at Refuge Lowell teaching. Can you tell me what that experience has been like?
So I was one of Nikki's previous students, and she really inspired me to just be an artist first. But what really inspired me towards the end of my time with her before I headed off to college was the impact her teaching made on me as an artist. And that really put me into thinking, well, what happens if I go become a teacher?
What's it been like working with the students here at Refuge?
It's been totally awesome. The kids here are so motivated and they really want to be here, and they go outside their comfort zone, and it's just been really interesting. These are kids who really want to do art and be art.
This wild, fun, eclectic space is where all the creativity happens. So if you have more questions about Nikki Girafo or Refuge Lowell, visit www.refugelowell.com. The UMass Lowell Athletics are in their second full year of Division I eligibility. D1 is the highest, most competitive level of NCAA competition. The Riverhawk men's soccer team is nationally ranked in D1 for the first time ever. The Division I status of the team has attracted talented players from around the world.
We have a lot of guys from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different cultures, so we all dabble in each other's activities. We got a lot of guys who speak different languages, and the guys who don't speak those languages or practice that language. We have guys who just go over someone's house just for a sip of coffee, or come out here, train together, or we have scavenger hunts, things like that. It's definitely been a long journey. I think we're progressing slow and steady, but we're definitely improving on a daily basis. And I think a lot of guys put in a lot of extra time, overtime into getting better, and I think that's what really helps us develop as a team. I don't think it brings any pressure. Maybe from the outside looking in it does, but I don't think our guys are too concerned over statistics and rankings and such. I think we're just trying to get better. We're just trying to make a statement. We're trying to be the best that we can possibly be, and at the end of the day, it's just a matter of doing what we love. So those things kind of don't take into play too much.
Yeah, I think it shows the hard work your team is putting in all year long, and obviously just the reputation we've been able to build over the last few years, and the upward trend.
Alves settles it. Left foot is good. Stanley Alves. Why not? Off the long feed from Ivan Blaskic.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the soccer in the communities in Massachusetts has definitely grown. There's a lot of talent in this state alone, so it really is our job to get out there and try to find the right players that can fit, and we know that we can find a lot of them in our own backyard, so we've been able to do that. We mix in players from a lot of different places, but it's definitely helped our program here over the last few years rise and become one of the more competitive programs in the region, if not the country. I don't think it's the pressure is not so much there. I think we've learned from last year and even the year before that rankings don't they don't mean a whole lot early on in the season, and even throughout the middle of the season. You're looking to finish strong and basically perform and execute every single game. So I don't think the pressure is really there as much as people might think.
And now it's time for this week's Sunspot with Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott.
Good evening, everyone. I am Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun, and thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of Sunspot. I'm going to throw you a little curveball in this episode. We don't have a politician on. We have a local man who's very active in local banking circles, but he's also very active in the Lowell High School Distinguished Alumni and a 1973 graduate
Very good.
of Lowell High School. Jim Moriarty, thanks for coming in. You've been in before
Pleasure.
to talk about
Yes,
this.
I have. We came in
the
last
alumni.
year and tried to give you the update of our distinguished alumni that year.
So this year is a special, I think, at least in one way, this is the 15th annual, correct?
Correct.
So maybe you could just give us just a little bit of history on, how it began.
Yep.
How many people have been inducted so far? Then I'll turn it over to you, and you can say who the 5 are who are going to be inducted. When is the ceremony? In November?
No, it's actually October 25th.
Oh, okay, October 25th. All
At
right.
Lowell High School.
Yep.
But
During the
anyway,
daytime, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's really a special day for all the students. So the students can sit and listen to all these distinguished alumni, really to hear what transpired and what was so special about Lowell High School. So it's just a special, special day. But
And to be inspired.
Yes, and that's what comes out of it. If you look back, it was really the brainchild of Brian Martin and Bill Asmaris. They said, geez, we start looking at the history of Lowell High School and, the first co-ed, first interracial, all of the public schools that you could possibly have, and then start looking at the people that came out of it. I mean, I'll get into this year's thing, but you start talking about Paul Songas, George Baracus, Alka McCallum. I mean, George Duncan, as you just mentioned.
Marty Meehan, too. We're talking about him off air.
We can't pick on Marty. We'll be polite on that. But you'd think of the Smile Train, Dr. Joe McCarthy, Dr. Brendan Leahy, the first guy to do the coronary eye transplant in New England. We can go through Herb Zarkin, the CEO, Teddy Leonsis. I mean, he was a classmate of mine in 1973.
Stanley Cup champion.
Exactly. I wish he brought that back.
We were all hoping that.
But it's great. So this year, we've got the distinction of 5 humanitarians. It's absolutely amazing. Out of the class of 1970,
I'm going to just interrupt before you get on to who they are, before we discuss who they are. How many people did you consider for the latest round?
The applications, we probably have 130 in file, and we're always looking for more. Once the application goes in, it stays in.
Okay.
So we only induct or honor 5 a year, which is very selective, because you look at my class was over 1,000 students, and now I think the average is probably around 600-700. I should look because it's 3,000.
That sounds right.
So you look at the multiplication on that. But it's an amazing group. So this year, if I start with 1937, Helen Brooks, just an amazing woman. She wasn't happy enough, satisfied enough with her job in Boston. She joined the WCAS. So she quickly got promoted to lieutenant. She was the first female officer working in the Pentagon. There were some quotes in there in some of the articles. She worked for General Patton. She worked for General Eisenhower. She got to speak to President Roosevelt about the injustice she felt, the racial injustice to the blacks in the military that she was at. She didn't quit there when she got done. She retired from the military. She was the silver hair representative from Massachusetts. So on and on and on.
Now, Helen Brooks, if I remember correctly, we were talking off air, she's one of 3 folks this year who are being honored posthumously.
Correct.
But Helen Brooks was also, if I remember correctly, when the Sun did the series of distinguished women.
Exactly.
I think we did 3 of them. That was a great run with those special editions.
Absolutely.
But she was one of them, right?
And she just passed away this past March. An amazing woman. She'd go in and speak at UMass Lowell, and actually it was the professor that nominated her, and the kids were just blown away. They couldn't believe this woman had the chutzpah in the 1940s to do this, to speak up to the president, to handle all that as a woman back in the 40s and
A real
50s.
firecracker, it sounds like.
A real firecracker. Then you jump up into 1947, you've got 2, actually.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, Peter Stamus, who everybody knew as the headmaster. But one thing that nobody really remembered, he was the co-founder of the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. He was also the co-founder of the Model Cities, handled the Flower Cities.
I was going to say the Flowering City.
Exactly. And so he was so involved in so many other things. He really has his handprint on so many of the other things, not just the high school.
Yeah, I think with Peter, most people say, oh yeah, he was the former headmaster. But there was the part of his career here in Lowell that the nonprofit side and the cultural side, which a lot of the politicians over the years have kind of dipped into, but he really did it in a big way.
He jumped in big time, and it was amazing. But one of his classmates is Dave Dowd.
Another inductee.
Another inductee. He, it was kind of funny, he went to Dartmouth and then to Harvard Law, And then after
He was an
Harvard Law-
underachiever.
Yeah. Well, actually, almost all of them were the economy medalist, Harvard, Dartmouth, one of those.
Yeah.
Nothing that you and I would have achieved, all right? I was very happy with UMass Amherst. So anyways, he went to Villanova. After he graduated, he took a job down in New York as a lawyer. He started in the 1950s working with gangs. Think about that. Back in the 50s, young kid out of law, young white kid working with gangs. He did tremendous. His calling really was to be a professor of law. He started teaching in Villanova in the early 60s. To this date, in 2018, in the graduating class of Villanova Law School, which is one of the top in the country, they still give the Donald Dowd Award. I mean, it's an amazing ongoing, and when we notified Villanova that they said he should have been recognized much earlier.
A long time ago.
But
So there's three.
Yeah, his nephew was Frank Talty that submitted the name.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So the next one is Dr. McAdams. Now, Dr. McAdams, after getting out of the service, after getting out of med school, he went into the Air Force.
What year was his
He was 1954.
Okay.
And 1954, so after he got out of med school, he went into the Air Force, got his pilot's license. And during his spare time, on his own money, he'd fly, he was stationed in Montana or Wyoming or that, he'd fly to some of the Navajo Indian reservations, service the poor and the kids there. And he did that. So fast forward, he ends up in California. He starts part of the group of the Flying Doctors. They're flying down to Mexico, taking care of these poor kids that would never have exposure.
Did you say he went to Nepal too?
In the 1960s or 70s, he went to Nepal, and same thing there. Now fast forward, as he's getting later and retired from his practice, he's now known in his district in California as the Nancy Donahoe of law.
Yeah.
Very involved in the theater, very generous, started the philanthropy, and what have you. And it was his cousin, Greg McAdams, who nominated him. And we never would have known these stories without these people nominating that. And then the last one I think you know pretty well.
Oh, very well.
Is Jimmy Campbell. All right. Jimmy Campbell, you could talk about him when he was a school teacher, a probation officer, assistant city manager. I mean, think
State official.
I was going to say what he did with the workers' comp in the Department of Industrial Accident.
And now he's back at MCC.
Yeah, he's the chairman,
of the board.
But I think, Jimmy, one of the biggest things he did, and I remember Bud Caulfield talking about it when he came to the council and said, we really should take advantage of this 90% reimbursement. I've got a vision of building 14 new schools or rehabbing. I mean, and he worked with Paul Sheehy, who was in the state senate at that time. They got the funding for the city of Lowell to think about that. If they didn't do it then, the 14 schools.
Which he did with the late superintendent, George Sapasaris.
Exactly.
Now,
also,
is George already in?
Yes, he is.
He is.
That's
good.
Yes.
You know, so there are the five.
Yes.
Four very well-known and accomplished men, and Helen Megan Brooks. You know, whose job is it once the committee selects that this person is in? Whose job is it to then call a representative of that family or to call the person themselves? Because that must be a very rewarding call to make,
Brian
to
Martin
deliver such
is
good
kind
news.
enough to do that for us. He's now the chairperson of the selection committee, which we're thrilled.
Who else is on the selection committee? Is it
Rather
really
not
long?
get into- it's about 7 names, and I don't need
I'll
them
get it anyway. Go ahead.
get hammered.
Yeah.
We get hammered anyways.
Yeah.
Because of, and I mean, you get picked on not drinking, so we don't want to go that
that's
route.
fine.
But Brian gives the call, lets them know the date, make sure they can make it here, and lines the whole thing up. And it's just so rewarding, because then the family members, or even like, as you said, Peter Stamus, the relatives have already started calling. I mean, Jimmy Campbell, I think there's going to be requests for probably 100 tickets. It is amazing. The Dowd, Frank Talty, letting his family know about that. Greg McAdams was so excited about his family, you know, recognizing his cousin that should have been recognized
Well,
before.
I know for a fact that Jim Campbell was very excited about it, because I was in a conversation with him several months ago, which eventually led me to call you, because he mentioned it, and he was just really happy about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that makes Lowell High School special. I know other schools have tried to copy the Distinguished Alumni. I think Chelmsford has a very active program, and a fellow in my office, Chris Basaric, is very, very active in that. But I think it's one of the things that really puts Lowell High School, sets Lowell High School aside.
Absolutely, it does. And as we said, it's all to inspire the kids, because if the kids hear the stories of these people and what they've achieved, and they sat in the same seats, they walked down the same corridors, nothing changed, and they say, you know, I can do that. You start looking back some of these histories, you know, whether you talk about Ben Butler or you talk about, you know,
the Civil War general.
And if it wasn't, we would be wearing different uniforms, you know. Billy Sullivan started the Jimmy Fund. Nobody knew about that stuff. You start going through the list of that. We mentioned some of the other names. I don't want to offend anybody.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's impossible.
It is absolutely amazing, you know, and I'm just looking at the number 2. I look at Mr. Goldman. I mean, if it wasn't for him in the back door, Israel never would have been established. I mean, this is it. We talk about doctors, we talk about lawyers, authors, poets. We've got everything. But we need people to nominate people.
Yeah, let me just probe on that a little bit. So you kind of have a pool of applicants, and if someone submitted you know, a possible applicant back in, say, 2000, even though that person has not been selected, that person stays in the mix.
Exactly.
And that person gets considered every year.
Correct.
Going forward, correct? So you got about 130 possibilities in the pool now?
In the pool now. I'd have to look. We have a cheat sheet so that you don't have to read everything.
Every year, do you get more? Do you get?
Yes.
Like, how many do you usually get every year?
Well, this year we probably only got 20 to 30. I would have to check with Sue to see exactly what the number was. But we're always looking for because somebody would send it in, they just put a name and a 2 sentences, and would send back and say, you know, really put some time into this.
So if someone wants to recommend someone, how does that person go about doing it? We have about a minute left.
Okay, go to the website, Lowell High School website, under Distinguished Alumni. They have an application. It's a 3-page application.
A 3-page application?
That's all.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, 2 of the pages are almost blank, so it's real easy. And then we ask you to put 4 or 5 pages. Keep it to that. We don't want a thesis, but highlight what they did, why they should be recognized, and that type of achievement. And that's all it is, Chris. If they can go in...
That's the only way to do it, right?
That's the only way to do it. So
I can't send a letter to Lowell High School. You got to go do it through the website.
You got to do the thing, and we might send back saying, we need this information from you. And that's what we try to do, because when the committee sits down and reviews them, they might never have heard this name. I know nobody heard of Herb Zock, and he was the CEO, chairman of BJ's.
All right, so we're out of time, unfortunately, Jim. I like this topic. I like Lowell High School. So to reiterate, the ceremony is on October 25th.
Correct.
During the daytime at Lowell High School. That's by design. To inspire students, and students can see these folks or their descendants. And one last time, who are the 5? Quickly.
Who are the 5? It's Helen Brooks.
Yes.
Mr. Dowd, Mr. Stamus, Dr. McAdams, and Jimmy Campbell.
Another list, and that's the 15th annual induction ceremony of the Lowell High School Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame. Thank you for tuning in to this latest edition of Sunspot. Jim, thanks for coming in today to talk about this.
Chris. Greatly
I appreciate it. And we'll do a little blurb on this in the newspaper, and then we'll also cover that ceremony on October 25th. Have a good night, everyone.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku at LTC Lowell, or get the link on Facebook. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.